Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're heading somewhere that smells like roasted nuts and earth, where steam rises from clay cups and the air buzzes with 1,000 conversations in Nahuatl. You're standing in the greatest marketplace the Americas have ever seen, and in your hand is something more valuable than silver: a handful of cacao beans. Good thing this isn't your life, because you're about to witness an empire fall, an ocean crossing, and the birth of humanity's most beloved addiction. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing this community spread across the globe, all of us exploring history together in our own little corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun hasn't fully risen over Tenochtitlan, but the Tlatelolco market is already alive with thousands of voices. You're standing in the largest marketplace in Mesoamerica, some say the entire world, in 1519. And everywhere you look, there's movement. Canoes glide through the canals, carrying goods from every corner of the Aztec Empire. Jade from the south, obsidian from the mountains, feathers so bright they look like they're still attached to living birds. And everywhere, there are cacao beans. You watch a woman in a woven huipil dress carefully count out 3 beans into a vendor's palm. In exchange, she receives a ripe avocado. 3 beans. That's the going rate. A turkey egg? 3 beans. A newly hatched turkey? 100 beans. A small rabbit for tonight's stew? 30 beans. But if you want a slave, a human being who'll serve you for life, that'll cost you anywhere from 70 to 200 cacao beans, depending on their skills and strength. The whole economy runs on these wrinkled brown pods that grow in the humid lowlands, far from this high-altitude city. Here's the thing that would blow your mind if you were actually standing here. Cacao doesn't even grow in Tenochtitlan. The city sits at over 7,000 feet above sea level, built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Cacao trees need hot, humid lowlands to thrive. So every single bean in this market has traveled hundreds of miles, carried on the backs of porters or in canoes, from places like Tabasco and Soconusco. The Aztecs conquered these regions, partly, some historians argue primarily, to control the cacao supply. It's like if a modern nation went to war over coffee beans, except cacao is currency, medicine, and a direct link to the gods all rolled into one. You step closer to a merchant's stall and watch him examine beans with the intensity of a jeweler appraising diamonds. He's checking for counterfeits. Yes, cacao counterfeiting was absolutely a thing. Clever con artists would carefully empty out cacao shells and fill them with mud or avocado pits, then reseal them. The punishment if you got caught? Historians still argue whether it was death or enslavement. But either way, you didn't want to be that guy. The merchant holds each bean up to the light, rolls it between his fingers, even sniffs it. Quality matters when your currency can also be turned into a drink. Speaking of drinks, you notice a woman at another stall pouring liquid between 2 vessels, holding them farther and farther apart. The stream of dark liquid grows longer, and foam begins to form. This is xocolatl, the drink of nobles and warriors. The foam is the most prized part, the sign of a properly prepared beverage. She's adding ground cacao, water, chili peppers, and cornmeal. No sugar. That doesn't exist here yet. The Aztecs like their chocolate bitter, spicy, and intense. It's not a dessert. It's fuel. It's medicine. It's ceremony. A group of Aztec warriors passes by, and you notice the elaborate featherwork on their cloaks. These are men who've taken captives in battle, earned their status through blood and courage. They stop at the chocolate stool. Warriors are given cacao rations before battle. The drink provides energy and courage. The stimulants in cacao, theobromine and a little caffeine, aren't as strong as modern coffee, but they're enough to give you an edge when you're about to face obsidian-tipped spears. You watch the warriors drink, and you realize something else. Only certain people get to enjoy this regularly. Commoners, maybe on special occasions, a wedding, a religious festival. But nobility, priests, warriors, and long-distance merchants called pochteca. They drink xocolatl daily. It's a status symbol. If you're drinking chocolate, you're somebody. The word chocolate itself will eventually come from xocolatl, though linguists still debate the exact etymology. Some say it means bitter water. Others argue it refers to the sound of the liquid being poured back and forth to create foam. A priest walks by, his black robe stark against the colourful market. His hair is long and matted with blood from ritual self-sacrifice. He carries a pouch of cacao beans, payment for a ceremony perhaps, or offerings for the temple. Cacao plays a central role in Aztec religion. It's associated with Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god. Legend says Quetzalcoatl himself brought the cacao tree to humanity, stealing it from paradise to give mortals a taste of divine food. Every sip of xocolatl is a small act of communion with the gods. The market stretches in every direction, organized into sections by product. There's the pottery area, where clay cups for drinking chocolate are stacked in precarious towers. The textile section, where cotton and maguey fiber cloth hangs like colorful curtains. The food area, where you can smell roasting maize, chili peppers, tomatoes, and the earthy scent of cacao being ground on metates, those volcanic stone grinding slabs that have been used here for thousands of years. You pick up a dried cacao pod someone has on display. It's about the size of a football, oblong and ridged, with a hard shell. Inside are 30 to 40 beans, each surrounded by sweet white pulp. The Mayans and other Mesoamerican peoples ferment this pulp to make a mildly alcoholic beverage. But the Aztecs are more interested in the beans themselves. After harvest, these beans are fermented for several days, dried in the sun, then roasted. The process is complex, refined over centuries. Without proper fermentation, cacao tastes terrible, harsh and bitter without any of the complex flavors we associate with chocolate. A child runs past, and you notice she's sucking on something. It's the white pulp from a cacao pod. Sweet, tropical, tasting nothing like chocolate. Most of the world today has never tasted this part of the cacao fruit. But here in Mesoamerica, it's a treat for kids. The beans are too valuable for children to waste on mere eating. The sun climbs higher, and the market grows more crowded. You estimate there are at least 20,000 people here, maybe more. The Spanish conquistador, Bernal Diaz del Castillo, will later write about this market, claiming that it operated with more order and efficiency than any European market he'd ever seen. Judges sit in a raised building overlooking the plaza, ready to settle disputes immediately. Guards patrol to prevent theft. The whole thing runs like clockwork. You watch another transaction. A farmer is buying a new obsidian blade for his agricultural work. The cost? 10 cacao beans. The vendor bites one bean to verify it's real, then nods and hands over the gleaming black blade. This is money that can be eaten, drunk, or planted to grow more money. Try doing that with a gold coin. As the morning stretches on, you begin to understand something profound. This entire civilization is built partially on chocolate. It's not just a luxury or a treat, it's infrastructure. It's the oil of the Aztec Empire, the commodity that keeps everything running. Control the cacao supply and you control trade. Control trade and you control power. But here's what you don't know yet. What nobody standing in this market in 1519 could possibly imagine. Within 2 years, this city will be in ruins. The canals will run with blood. The temples will be torn down. And these cacao beans that pass through thousands of hands today will begin a journey across an ocean to a place where people have never tasted chocolate, never imagined it, never dreamed that something so bitter could eventually become so beloved. For now, though, the market hums with life. The smell of roasting cacao fills the air. Somewhere, a vendor laughs, a baby cries. A poet composes verses about the foam on xocolatl, comparing it to clouds, to divine inspiration, to the breath of gods. You're holding history in your hand, and it tastes like the future. You're standing in Montezuma's palace now, and if you thought the market was impressive, this is something else entirely. The palace complex covers several acres in the heart of Tenochtitlan, with gardens, aviaries, and rooms beyond counting. But right now, you're focused on one thing: the Emperor's chocolate service, and it's unlike anything you've ever witnessed. Montezuma II, his name actually means he frowns like a lord in Nahuatl, sits on a low-carved seat, and before him is an array of golden goblets that catch the light filtering through the windows. Not brass, not gold-plated, solid gold. The Spanish chroniclers will later claim that Montezuma drinks 50 golden goblets of chocolate every single day. 50. Some historians think this number is exaggerated, possibly a misunderstanding of the word prepared versus consumed. But even if the real number is 20 or 30, that's still an astonishing amount of chocolate. You watch the preparation process, and its elaborate ceremony. Special servants, women chosen specifically for this task, prepare the xocolatl in clay vessels. They're adding ground cacao, water, ground maize, vanilla pods, and chili peppers. But here's where Montezuma's chocolate differs from the market version. They're also adding xocolatl, vanilla orchid, xocolatl, a type of pepper, and sometimes achiote for color. The recipe is royal, secret, refined over generations. The most important part comes next. A woman pours the mixture back and forth between vessels, held at increasing distances apart. The liquid stream grows longer and longer, and a thick foam develops on top. This foam, this is what Montezuma prizes most. When the goblet is presented to him, the foam should be so thick and rich that it sits on top like a cloud. If the foam isn't perfect, the servant might be dismissed. Standards here are high. Montezuma lifts the golden cup and drinks. He doesn't sip delicately. He drains the entire goblet in a few swallows. Then he sets it aside, and another is immediately presented. The golden cups themselves are used only once per serving and then taken away. This isn't about washing dishes later. It's about purity, ceremony. The idea that each cup of chocolate is a unique communion with the divine. Here's something the Spanish conquistadors find scandalous. Montezuma drinks chocolate before visiting his wives. The Aztecs believe xocolatl has powerful properties, including as an aphrodisiac. Whether this is actually true or just cultural belief, historians still argue. Theobromine, the main stimulant in chocolate, does have mild mood-enhancing effects. But the Spanish, watching Montezuma's chocolate consumption and then his evening activities, draw their own conclusions. Later, this reputation will actually help chocolate spread through Europe. People are always interested in aphrodisiacs, it turns out. But we need to talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the Spanish conquistadors in the palace. Because while Montezuma is drinking his chocolate, Hernan Cortés and his men are living as guests here in Tenochtitlan. It's November 15, 19, and the situation is tense, strange, unprecedented. The Spanish arrived with their horses, which the Aztecs had never seen before, their guns, their metal armor, and their audacity. Montezuma, for reasons that historians still debate, welcomed them. Some scholars argue Montezuma thought Cortés might be the returning god Quetzalcoatl. Others say this is a myth invented later to make the conquest seem more mystical than it was. The truth is probably more complex and political. Montezuma was navigating a difficult situation. These strangers had powerful weapons, unpredictable behavior, and valuable potential as allies, or devastating potential as enemies. You watch Cortés observing the chocolate ceremony. The Spanish have been offered xocolatl, and their reactions have been mixed. Most of them hate it. It's bitter, spicy, completely unlike anything in European cuisine. There's no sugar in Aztec chocolate, remember. One Spanish soldier will later write that it seemed more a drink for pigs than humanity. Nice guy. But Cortés is smarter than his soldiers. He sees past the taste to the value. He notices that cacao beans are currency. He observes the elaborate ceremony around chocolate consumption. He understands that this drink represents power, wealth, and status. Even if he doesn't personally love the taste, and accounts suggest he didn't, at least not at first, he recognizes its importance. The palace around you is filled with wonders that the Spanish are cataloguing with barely concealed greed. There's an aviary with birds from across the empire, a zoo with jaguars, eagles, and exotic animals, gardens filled with medicinal plants, including cacao saplings being carefully cultivated in artificially warmed conditions. Because remember, cacao doesn't naturally grow at this altitude. The Aztecs have essentially created a greenhouse system, centuries before Europeans will refine the technology. Montezuma finishes another cup, and you notice something. Despite the elaborate ceremony, despite the golden goblets and the careful preparation, there's an undercurrent of anxiety in the palace. Omens have been reported for years. Comets, temples catching fire spontaneously, people hearing the voice of a weeping woman crying, "My children, we are lost," in the night. Whether these omens were real or later inventions to explain the conquest, they reflect the psychological state of the empire in 1519. The Aztec Empire was powerful, but not universally loved. The tribute system that brought cacao beans flowing into Tenochtitlan also created resentment among conquered peoples. When Cortés landed on the coast, he found allies willing to help him fight the Aztecs. The Tlaxcalans, longtime enemies of the Aztecs, joined the Spanish. So did the Totonacs. The conquest won't be just Spanish versus Aztec. It'll be Spanish plus indigenous allies versus the Aztec Empire. But tonight, in this moment, none of that has happened yet. Montezuma drinks his chocolate. Cortés watches and plans. The golden cups are carried away and replaced with fresh ones. The foam on the xocolatl remains perfectly thick. You're offered a cup yourself, and you take a tentative sip. The first thing that hits you is the bitterness. Deep, almost overwhelming. Then comes the heat from the chili peppers, building gradually. There's an earthiness to it, and something floral from the vanilla. It's not sweet. It's challenging, complex, intense. This is chocolate as a sacrament, as medicine, as stimulant, not dessert, not comfort food. Something else entirely. The theobromine starts to work its way into your system. A gentle lift, a mild euphoria, a sense of heightened awareness. Combined with the capsaicin from the chilies, you feel warm, awake, present. You understand why warriors drink this before battle. You understand why Montezuma consumes it before his evening activities. This is powerful stuff, even if it tastes like the earth itself. Montezuma speaks to Cortés through translators. The conversation is cordial, careful, each man measuring the other. They discuss many things, but also the cacao trade, the chocolate preparation, the sources of the empire's wealth. Cortés is gathering information, always gathering information. Here's something most people don't know. Cortés will eventually become a cacao plantation owner himself. After the conquest, he'll establish plantations in Mexico and become wealthy from chocolate production. The man who helps destroy the Aztec Empire will profit from one of its most valuable commodities. History has a dark sense of irony sometimes, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, in this moment, the empire still stands. The market still bustles with trade. The cacao beans still flow into Tenochtitlan like rivers of brown gold. Montezuma drinks cup after cup, maintaining the ritual that has sustained Aztec rulers for generations. What nobody in this room knows, what nobody could possibly predict, is that within a few years, this drink will be crossing an ocean. European tongues will struggle with its bitterness. European minds will work to transform it into something new. And eventually, centuries from now, chocolate will become so ubiquitous, so beloved, so integrated into global culture, that people will forget it started here, in this palace, in these golden cups, in the hands of an emperor who could never imagine his civilization's fall. Montezuma finishes his 50th cup. The servants bow and retreat. The golden goblets disappear into the palace's depths. Cortés excuses himself, and you watch him go, his metal armor clanking against the polished stone floors. The sun is setting over Tenochtitlan, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere in the city, the market is closing. Vendors are counting their cacao beans. Families are preparing evening meals. Priests are conducting ceremonies at the great temple. And in this palace, surrounded by wealth beyond measure, Montezuma sits quietly, perhaps sensing what's coming, perhaps just enjoying the lingering taste of chocolate on his tongue. It's 1520, but a few of the sailors, including Cortés himself, have acquired a taste for it. Or maybe they're just stubborn enough to keep drinking it because they've invested so much in making it significant. Either way, every day you see chocolate being prepared on deck, the beans roasted over small fires, ground on stone metates brought from Mexico, mixed with water and spices. The preparation method is still fully Aztec. They're adding chili peppers, vanilla, sometimes annatto for color. They're pouring the liquid back and forth to create foam. No sugar yet. That innovation is still years away, waiting in a Spanish or Mexican convent, where some creative nun will have the idea to add the expensive sweetener to offset the bitterness. The ship rolls through a storm, and you watch in horror as one of the cacao chests slides across the deck. Sailors scramble to secure it, shouting in Spanish. These beans represent a fortune, not just in intrinsic value, but in potential. If Cortés can convince the Spanish court that chocolate is worth importing, that it's exotic and valuable and desirable, then he'll have created a new trade route, a new source of wealth from the conquered territories. You're halfway across the Atlantic when you overhear a conversation between Cortés and one of his lieutenants. They're discussing marketing strategy, essentially. How do you sell a bitter drink to a sweet-toothed nobility? How do you convince Spanish aristocrats that they want to drink something that most people find unpalatable on first taste? The answer, Cortés suggests, is framing. You don't present chocolate as food, you present it as medicine. The Spanish are obsessed with medicine from exotic lands. They believe that substances from the New World might have miraculous healing properties. Cortés plans to emphasize chocolate's energizing effects, its supposed aphrodisiac qualities, its use by Aztec nobility and warriors. Make it seem prestigious, medicinal, exotic, and rare. Historians still argue about exactly when chocolate first arrived in Spain. Some say Cortés brought it in 1528. Others argue it arrived earlier through other channels, perhaps through Spanish monks or traders. The truth is probably messy. Multiple introductions, multiple attempts to figure out what to do with these strange beans. What we know for certain is that chocolate doesn't take Spain by storm immediately. For decades it remains obscure, known only to a small group of people who've spent time in Mexico, or who have access to the very limited supply of beans being imported. The real chocolate revolution in Europe won't start until the mid to late 1500s, when Spanish monks and nuns start refining the recipe and production methods increase. The ship finally makes landfall in Spain, and you watch the cacao being unloaded. Some of the beans have gone moldy during the voyage. They're sensitive to humidity and heat. Others have been eaten by rats. But enough survive to make the journey worthwhile. Cortés presents himself at the Spanish court with all the showmanship he can muster. He's conquered an empire, sent back massive amounts of gold, and now he's brought exotic curiosities, including chocolate. The Spanish crown is interested, if skeptical. They taste the xocolatl, and their reactions are polite. Some actually enjoy it. Others find it strange but intriguing. Nobody is raving about it, yet. You watch as Cortés demonstrates the preparation method, the pouring back and forth to create foam, the careful roasting of the beans, the addition of vanilla and spices. He emphasizes that Emperor Montezuma drank 50 golden goblets daily. He mentions the aphrodisiac properties. He suggests that chocolate provides energy and mental clarity. The Spanish court nods thoughtfully. This might be something. It might be valuable. But they're not ready to commit to large-scale importation yet. The infrastructure doesn't exist. The taste is still too foreign. And frankly, Spain has bigger concerns. They're managing a massive empire, dealing with European politics, fighting wars. But seeds have been planted, both literal and figurative. Some of the Spanish nobility start requesting chocolate. Cacao trees are being cultivated in Spanish-controlled territories in Mexico and Central America. The knowledge of chocolate preparation is spreading through Spanish colonial society. What's happening, though you can't quite see it yet, is that chocolate is beginning to change. In Mexican convents, nuns who've adopted Christianity but retained indigenous knowledge are experimenting with the recipe. They're trying different spice combinations. They're debating whether chocolate can be consumed during religious fasts. Spoiler, eventually the church will rule that it can, since it's a beverage, not food. And somewhere, maybe in Spain, maybe in Mexico, maybe in multiple places simultaneously, someone is adding sugar to chocolate for the first time. The exact moment is lost to history. There's no documentation of the first sweetened chocolate, but it happens, probably in the mid-1500s, and it changes everything. Because once you add sugar to chocolate, you transform it from a bitter medicinal drink into something that appeals to universal human taste preferences. Bitter plus sweet equals magic. The complexity of chocolate's flavor compounds, its slight acidity, the way it melts on the tongue, all of this combines with sugar to create something genuinely delicious rather than challenging. But that transformation is still ahead of you. Right now, in 1528, you're watching Cortés store his remaining cacao beans in a Spanish warehouse. The beans that survived the voyage, the beans that might become the foundation of a trade empire. The beans that taste like bitterness and conquest and the future, all rolled into one. A Spanish merchant approaches Cortés, asking about purchasing some beans. They haggle over price. The merchant wants to experiment with selling chocolate to wealthy families. Cortés quotes a high price. These beans traveled across an ocean, after all. They're exotic, rare, valuable. The deal is struck. A small amount of cacao changes hands. The merchant walks away with a bag of beans, and you wonder if he has any idea what he's just bought. Does he know he's holding the future of European cuisine? Does he understand that centuries from now, chocolate will be everywhere? In candies, cakes, drinks, sold in shops on every corner. Of course he doesn't. He just knows he's bought something exotic to impress his friends. The sun sets over the Spanish harbor. The galleon rocks gently at anchor. And somewhere in a warehouse, cacao beans from Mexico sit in the darkness, waiting for someone to figure out how to make them irresistible to European tastes. The bitter crossing is complete. The transformation is about to begin. Sister Maria, we'll call her, is demonstrating the new recipe to younger nuns. She's explaining that the sugar must be added carefully, dissolved completely, so the drink isn't grainy. She's noting that different ratios of sugar to cacao create different effects. Less sugar maintains more of the chocolate's complexity. More sugar makes it more palatable to European visitors, who find traditional xocolatl too intense. Here's something fascinating. The nuns are also debating the theological implications of chocolate. Can you drink it during Lent? Does it count as breaking a fast? Is it food or beverage? This might seem silly to us now, but in the 16th century Catholic world, these questions matter enormously. The Church's official position will eventually be that chocolate is a beverage and therefore doesn't break fasts, which helps it spread through Catholic Europe significantly. The convent kitchen smells incredible. Roasting cacao, vanilla, cinnamon, another innovation the nuns are adding, and sugar caramelizing slightly as it's heated with the chocolate. This is a scent that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world yet. European kitchens don't smell like this. Mexican indigenous kitchens don't smell like this. This is something new, a fusion, a creation born from conquest and cultural exchange. You watch Sister Maria pour the sweetened chocolate back and forth between vessels, creating foam. The Aztec technique persists, but the flavor is revolutionary. She pours a cup for herself and the other nuns, and they drink. Their faces show pleasure. This isn't just medicine anymore, isn't just obligation. This is delicious. Word is spreading beyond the convent walls. Wealthy Spanish colonials in Mexico are hearing about this sweetened chocolate and requesting it. The recipe is being shared, carefully, like any valuable secret. Some convents are starting to sell chocolate preparation services. You bring the cacao beans and sugar, they prepare it according to their refined recipe, and you pay for the expertise. She agrees to the standing order. And in that agreement, in that moment of commercialization, chocolate takes another step toward becoming the global commodity it will eventually be. It's moving from indigenous tradition to colonial experiment to marketable product. The sun sets over Oaxaca. The convent bells ring for evening prayers. In the kitchen, cacao beans cool on their roasting trays, filling the air with their intoxicating aroma. Sister Maria kneels in the chapel, praying. She doesn't know she's part of a revolution. She doesn't know that her recipes will spread across oceans, that her innovations will be copied and refined and commercialized. She just knows she's found a way to make something bitter into something beautiful. And sometimes, that's enough to change the world. But here's where it gets really interesting. Spanish women who've spent time in Mexican convents are returning to Spain and bringing chocolate recipes with them. Spanish princesses who marry into other European royal families are bringing their chocolate habits with them. The drink is beginning to spread through European nobility like a delicious virus. The most famous example is Anne of Austria, who despite her name was Spanish, European royal naming was confusing. When she married Louis XIII of France in 1615, she brought her chocolate habit with her to the French court. Suddenly, French nobility wanted to try this exotic Spanish drink. This wasn't just cultural exchange. This was fashion, prestige, the desire to emulate royalty. But we're getting ahead of ourselves again. Right now, in this Mexican convent around 1550, the innovation is still new, still being perfected. The nuns are experimenting with different spices. Besides cinnamon, they're trying anise. Some convents are adding orange flower water. Others are experimenting with different roasting times for the cacao beans, discovering that lighter roasts taste more acidic and fruity, while darker roasts taste more bitter and intense. Sister Maria is also teaching the younger nuns about cacao bean quality. Not all beans are equal. Some are more bitter, some more fragrant. The best beans come from specific regions. Soconusco is still prized, just as it was in Aztec times. Venezuelan cacao is starting to gain a reputation for quality. The nuns are becoming experts, developing sophisticated palates that can detect subtle differences in bean origin and quality. There's a knock at the convent door, and a wealthy Spanish merchant enters with a request. He's hosting a gathering and wants the nuns to prepare chocolate for his guests. Sister Maria agrees, negotiating a price, payment in silver, and a donation to the convent's charity work. This is becoming a business, albeit one conducted within the walls of religious institutions. The preparation for the merchant's event is elaborate. The nuns roast beans in clay pots over carefully controlled fires. They grind the roasted beans with sugar and spices on metates. The grinding stone's so hot from friction that the mixture begins to melt and blend together. They're creating a paste, essentially the precursor to modern chocolate bars. This paste can be stored, transported, and later dissolved in hot water or milk to create drinking chocolate. It's more portable than liquid chocolate, more stable, easier to trade. Some historians argue that this innovation, creating solid or semi-solid chocolate paste that could be reconstituted, was as important as sweetening chocolate in the first place. You taste the finished product and it's a revelation. The bitterness is still there, providing depth and complexity, but the sugar has transformed it into something welcoming rather than challenging. The cinnamon adds warmth. The vanilla adds floral notes. The texture is velvety smooth because the nuns have spent so much time grinding and blending. This tastes like the future. This tastes like something people will crave, will pay money for, will build entire industries around. This is the chocolate that will conquer Europe, not bitter xocolatl, but this sweetened, spiced, refined version created through cultural fusion in colonial Mexican convents. The merchant returns that evening, delighted with his chocolate. His guests, he reports, were amazed. Some of them want to order chocolate regularly. Could the convent prepare a standing weekly order? Sister Maria considers. This could become a significant source of income for the convent. But it would also mean more work, more time spent in the kitchen rather than in prayer. The balance between spiritual life and practical necessity is always delicate in religious communities. You're standing outside a convent in Oaxaca, Mexico, around 1550, and you're about to witness the moment that changes chocolate forever. The stone walls are thick, keeping the interior cool even in the Mexican heat. Inside, Spanish nuns who've established this monastery in the decades after the conquest are conducting an experiment that will reshape world cuisine. Here's what happened. Spanish nuns and monks in colonial Mexico found themselves in a unique position. They had access to indigenous knowledge about cacao preparation, thanks to converted indigenous servants and parishioners who worked in the convents. They also had access to imported European ingredients, including sugar from Spanish-controlled plantations in the Caribbean. And they had time, lots of time, to experiment in convent kitchens. The story that persists, though historians still argue about whether it's literal truth or legend, involves nuns at a convent in Oaxaca, preparing chocolate for a visiting bishop. They added sugar to offset the bitterness, creating sweetened chocolate, possibly for the first time. The bishop supposedly loved it. Word spread, and suddenly everyone wanted their chocolate sweet. Whether that specific story is accurate or not, what's undeniable is that convents became chocolate innovation centers. Nuns perfected recipes, experimented with spice combinations, and figured out how to make chocolate appealing to European tastes while respecting its indigenous origins. This wasn't just about sweetening. It was about creating an entirely new culinary tradition. You slip inside the convent, historical imagination allows you certain privileges, and you watch the nuns working in the kitchen. They're grinding cacao beans on metates, just like the Aztecs did. But the ingredients they're adding are different. Yes, there's vanilla and sometimes a touch of chili. But now there's also sugar. Expensive, imported sugar that transforms the bitter drink into something magical. You're stepping into White's Chocolate House in London in 1693, and the scene is absolute chaos. Wealthy men in elaborate wigs and fine coats are shouting bets across the crowded room. Cards slap against tables, dice rattle in cups, and everywhere, people are drinking chocolate. White's isn't the first chocolate house in London. That honour goes to a place opened in 1657, but it's the most notorious. This is where fortunes change hands, where reputations are made and destroyed, where the wealthy and powerful gather to see and be seen. And chocolate is the excuse that brings them all together. The chocolate being served here bears almost no resemblance to the bitter xocolatl that Montezuma drank. It's sweet, it's creamy, and it's often made with milk instead of water. The English have taken the Spanish recipe and adapted it further, adding more sugar, incorporating dairy, creating something even more palatable than the convent versions from Mexico. Some chocolate houses are even serving it cold in summer, which would have baffled the Aztecs completely. You watch a server bring a steaming cup to a gentleman who's just lost a considerable sum at cards. The chocolate is thick, almost pudding-like, served in a fine porcelain cup with a saucer. The man drinks it quickly, barely tasting it, and calls for another. Chocolate has become the social lubricant of the English upper class. Less intoxicating than alcohol, but providing enough of a stimulant buzz to keep people alert and sociable for hours. Here's what's remarkable. In less than 150 years, chocolate has gone from being completely unknown in Europe to being the foundation of an entire social institution. London alone has dozens of chocolate houses by the 1690s. Paris has them too, though the French prefer to drink their chocolate in more refined, less raucous establishments. Vienna, Amsterdam, Madrid. Every major European city has places where people gather specifically to drink chocolate. But chocolate houses are more than just cafes. They're political clubs, business exchanges, gambling dens, and gossip centres all rolled into one. At White's, you're as likely to overhear a plot against the king as you are to hear stock tips. The Whig Party holds meetings in some chocolate houses. The Tories prefer others. There's a chocolate house specifically for sea captains to exchange shipping news, another for writers and artists. These places are becoming essential to European social and political life. And it's all built on cacao beans that still come from the same regions the Aztecs once controlled. Spanish and Portuguese colonies in Central and South America are now producing cacao on a massive scale. Unlike the limited harvest of the Aztec period, when cacao was precious and controlled, European colonial powers are establishing vast plantations. And here's the dark part we need to acknowledge. Much of this cacao is being produced by enslaved labor. The Atlantic slave trade, already well established for sugar production, extends to cacao plantations. African slaves are being forced to cultivate, harvest, and process cacao beans. The sweet chocolate being drunk in these elegant European establishments is built on immense human suffering. This is the ugly reality beneath the delicious surface. Chocolate's journey to Europe is inseparable from colonialism and slavery. But the wealthy men in White's chocolate house don't think about that. They're focused on their bets, their politics, their social climbing. A young man named Jonathan Swift, who will eventually write Gulliver's Travels, is sitting in the corner, observing everything with sharp, satirical eyes. He's taking mental notes for future essays, mocking the pretensions of chocolate house society. You notice that the clientele is exclusively male and wealthy. Women aren't allowed in most chocolate houses. They're considered too rough, too political, too masculine. Upper-class women drink chocolate at home, in private, often in the morning before getting out of bed. It's become fashionable for wealthy ladies to receive morning visitors while drinking chocolate, creating a different kind of social ritual. The price of chocolate has dropped significantly since those early days when Cortés brought it to Spain. It's still expensive. A cup here costs about what a working-class person might earn in a day, but it's no longer impossibly rare. The expanding plantation system has increased supply. New trade routes have made importing more efficient, and competition between chocolate houses has driven some prices down. A gentleman at the next table is explaining chocolate's supposed health benefits to his companion. He claims it aids digestion, prevents consumption, tuberculosis, and improves virility. European physicians have embraced chocolate enthusiastically, writing entire treatises on its medicinal properties. Some of these claims are absurd by modern standards, but others have a grain of truth. Chocolate does contain stimulants and antioxidants that have mild beneficial effects. The other development that's happened is the rise of chocolate manufacturing. Before, everyone made chocolate from beans using labor-intensive manual grinding. But now, specialized chocolate makers are appearing. People who roast, grind, and prepare chocolate as their profession. They're developing techniques to do it more efficiently, creating better texture, more consistent flavor. This is the beginning of chocolate becoming an industrial product, rather than an artisanal one. You overhear someone mention the Dutch. The Dutch have been particularly innovative with chocolate processing. In a few decades, in 1828, a Dutch chemist named Coenraad Johannes van Houten will invent the cocoa press, which separates cocoa butter from cocoa solids, revolutionizing chocolate production and making possible the solid chocolate bars we know today. But that's still in the future. Right now, chocolate is still primarily a beverage. The evening wears on, and the gambling intensifies. A man just bet his horse on a single card draw. Another wagered his country estate. The chocolate keeps flowing, keeping everyone alert enough to make increasingly poor decisions. White's will eventually evolve into one of London's most exclusive gentlemen's clubs, but it will drop the chocolate focus. By the 1700s, coffee is becoming the more fashionable drink. But chocolate isn't disappearing. It's evolving again. It's moving from chocolate houses into homes. It's becoming a breakfast drink. It's being incorporated into desserts and pastries. French chefs are beginning to experiment with using chocolate in cooking, not just as a beverage. The evolution continues. You step outside White's into the London night. The street smells like coal smoke, horse manure, and sewage. This is London before modern sanitation, after all. But inside that building, for a moment, you smelled only chocolate. Sweet, rich, complex. You think about the journey you've witnessed. From Tenochtitlan's markets where cacao beans bought avocados and slaves, to Montezuma's golden cups, to Spanish galleons, to Mexican convents, to this chaotic gambling den in London. The bitter drink of Aztec emperors has become the sweet obsession of European aristocrats. But the transformation isn't finished. Chocolate still has centuries of evolution ahead. In the 1800s, someone will add milk and create milk chocolate. Someone else will figure out how to make solid chocolate bars. The Swiss will perfect their techniques. Milton Hershey will democratize chocolate, making it affordable for everyone. Chocolate chips will be invented, chocolate fountains, chocolate Easter bunnies, chocolate everything. The global chocolate industry in the future will be worth over $100 billion annually. People will consume millions of tons of chocolate every year. It will be in birthday cakes and Halloween candy, in hot cocoa and ice cream, in breakfast cereals and protein bars. It will be everywhere, ordinary, ubiquitous. And most people will have no idea that it started with an Aztec farmer in a humid lowland, carefully tending cacao trees that his ancestors cultivated for thousands of years. They won't know about Montezuma's 50 golden goblets. They won't know about Cortés's bitter crossing. They won't know about the Mexican nuns who first added sugar. They won't know about White's chocolate house and its rowdy gamblers. They'll just know that chocolate tastes good. And that, in its own way, is the completion of the journey. From sacred ritual to universal pleasure. From emperor's privilege to everyone's treat. The chocolate houses are closing now, their fires banking low, the last customers stumbling out into the night with the warm buzz of chocolate and bad decisions humming in their blood. You're walking through quieter streets now, away from the noise, toward rest. The story of chocolate's journey has carried you across centuries and oceans, from markets that no longer exist, to palaces turned to dust, to ships long since rotted away at the bottom of the sea. But the essence remains, that taste, that bittersweet complexity that humans first discovered in the humid forests of Mesoamerica and carried to every corner of the world. Think about it as you settle into sleep. Thousands of years of cultivation, hundreds of years of transformation, all so that sweetness could find its way to human tongues. The Aztec farmers who never imagined oceans being crossed. Montezuma, who never imagined his golden cups would become legend. Cortés, who never imagined chocolate would outlast his empire. The nuns, who never imagined their convent recipes would birth an industry. All of them connected by these beans, by this taste, by the human desire to transform the bitter into something beautiful. Tomorrow, you might drink hot chocolate or eat a chocolate bar. And now you'll remember, the long journey it took to reach you. From sacred to currency to beverage to candy. From Quetzalcoatl's gift to your morning cup. Chocolate carried itself across impossible distances to become what it is today. Ordinary magic, everyday wonder, the taste of history itself melting on your tongue. So rest now. Let the story settle. Let the journey fade into dream. The cacao pods are still growing somewhere in tropical heat. The beans are still being harvested, roasted, ground, transformed. The story never really ends. It just keeps flowing, like chocolate poured between vessels, creating foam, creating sweetness, creating connection across time. Sleep well. Dream of golden cups and distant markets. Dream of ships crossing dark water with precious cargo. Dream of the taste of transformation, the flavor of forever. The bittersweet story of how chocolate found its way to you,